Coming up on Locked On Bearcats, I'll tell you 7 things that need to happen for next season to be a success for the Cincinnati Bearcats. That's on today's episode of Locked On Bearcats.
Our Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. It's free and available everywhere you get your podcast. Happy Memorial Day to each and every one of you, and a special thank you to all the brave men and women who fight each and every day to protect the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. My name is Alex Frank, your host of Locked On Bearcats each and every day, bringing all of my experiences from my days as a play-by-play announcer and a weekly sports radio show host as a part of Bearcast Media, the student-run media organization at the University of Cincinnati. If you are watching today's episode on the Locked On Bearcats YouTube channel, which we are up to 124 subscribers and counting, but we're not done yet, so hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on YouTube. That way you can get an alert when a new episode drops. And you can also like and share a comment on today's video. If you are downloading from an audio platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts, don't forget to hit that subscribe button there too. You can also share a comment and or give it a rating. All of that on audio and YouTube helps more Bearcats fans like you find this podcast. So I was thinking over the weekend of 7 things. Touchdown 7. Touchdown's obviously worth 7 points if you tack on the PAT, which I may or may not have something related to the kicking game as part of my 7 things that need to happen for the 2022 Bearcats football season to be a success. So let's start off with this. A successful season for the Cincinnati Bearcats means winning a conference championship. Anything less, I consider a failure. Now, that's a topic for another day, but I just want to make it very clear. A successful season in my book for 2022 means the Bearcats winning a conference championship. Well, how do they get there? Let's go through the 7 steps for success. Number 1, shocker, Evan Prater must be the starter. If you've listened to this podcast long enough, you know how I feel about the quarterback battle. You know, for the last 2 months, I have been pounding my fist and whatever else, I'm trying to think of the saying here, beating it into submission. That's the phrase I'm looking for. I have been beating it into submission that Evan Prater must be the starting quarterback. Do not, as a Bearcats fan, I am going to help you here. Do not fall into that trap of, well, if Ben Bryant starts this team, they'll at least be 8-4. Stop right there. Do not think like that. That is not how you should be conditioned to think as a Bearcats fan. Let me remind you that the Bearcats are coming off of a college football playoff appearance. And by you, I mean those who aren't associated with the Cincinnati Bearcats on a daily basis, like those who are. Let me remind those on a national level that the Bearcats are coming off of a college football playoff appearance. Now, as for you, from Cincinnati, student, alum, fan, however else, maybe you're associated with the program, the university, if you're a Cincinnati Bearcats fan, Cincinnati resident, you should be thinking the same thing. Hey, we're coming off a college football playoff appearance. Why should we want to settle for 8-4? You're settling if you think that. Evan Prater will give this team the best chance of having a successful season. And I've already stated why Evan Prater will allow the Bearcats to be successful this season. No limits. There are no limits to his game. Dynamic playmaking, and that goes along with that no limits mentality. And quite frankly, he has the most experience. I will say it again. I will take a quarterback who backed up Desmond Ridder for 2 seasons when he was one of the top quarterbacks in the country in college football. over a quarterback who, yes, has had a full season's worth of starting experience, but did so at Eastern Michigan. Did any of you watch any MACtion this year? If you did, more power to you. I certainly did not. I saw Evan Prater. When he came into the games, I liked what I saw. He reminds me of who Desmond Ridder was when he first came here. That is why he should be the starter. If he is, there are no limits to the success this team can have. If Ben Bryant starts, not the worst thing. But then again, you're thinking, we'll at least be 8-4. Why are you settling for at least 8-4? Why aren't you settling for at least a conference championship? The Bearcats have won 2 straight, and they've been to 3 straight championship games. They're coming off a college football playoff appearance and 2 straight New Year's Six appearances. Why would you not settle for anything less than a conference championship? Let's go to my second thing that needs to happen for a successful season. The offensive line must take a step forward. Now, the offensive line last year was pretty good. Only allowed 24 sacks. However, 6 of those, meaning 25% of the sacks allowed by the Bearcats offensive line, which is returning all 5 starters from last year's team, and you can probably mix and match throughout fall camp who your starting 5 offensive linemen are going to be, because there's depth in that room. But 25% of the sacks allowed by the Cincinnati Bearcats offensive line came against Alabama. Now, that's Alabama. I understand they had 2 really good defensive players, Will Anderson and Phidarian Mathis. I understand all that. But I also saw them against Indiana and Notre Dame. It was a struggle for Desmond Ridder at times. Remember the first half in Indiana? Yeah, that almost wrecked the season. So this offensive line was really good in the other 11 games. Now, they were very good against Houston. They were very good against UCF and SMU. They were very good in a lot of games. But when we get to the big games, when we get to Arkansas, when we get to, if they play Houston again in the conference championship, if they play Indiana, or not if they play Indiana, when they play Indiana, the offensive line has to be better in big games. They may be overmatched in some games. I don't think they will be. Because as Bucky Brooks pointed out on the Move the Sticks podcast leading up to the playoff last season, if you haven't checked that podcast out after you listen to this podcast, maybe make that your, third listen, because I got a promo for your second listen. But if you get a chance to listen to the Move the Sticks podcast, do so. Bucky Brooks last year pointed out that this was not your average offensive line for a group of 5 school, and defensive line, for that matter. Cincinnati's offensive line was really good last year. They had some big dudes up front, and they're going to have them again this year. But in big games, when they face teams with defensive lines that are as big, if not bigger, which they probably will, if they go back to a New Year's Six Bowl, which I think they can, they're going to face some really strong defensive lines. Remember Georgia in 2020, Alabama last year. Again, the offensive line's good. There's a lot of continuity. There's a lot of familiarity. But there's also room for improvement. I understand only 18 sacks through 13 games. That's really good. But I saw 6 against Alabama. That's not good. Because this program is going to start to play in a lot of big games year in and year out. The offensive line is going to have to perform to give Evan Prater and the receiving corps the best chance to make plays and score points. You can have all the talent in the world on offense. This is what I said about the Bengals. You can have all the talent last year about the Bengals, rather. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have an offensive line that allows that offense to run its plays and routes to develop, what good is having all that talent? Because the quarterback's going to be on the ground every other play. The Bearcats' offensive line, like I said, it's really good. I like where it's at. I like the continuity and familiarity, but it's got to get better in big games. This program will play in at least one big game this year. We know one for sure in Arkansas. I believe they'll play in another big game in the conference championship. Coming up, I think there needs to be a leading man at one particular position in order for this season to be successful. I'll explain next. But first, I got to tell you about Bet Online. You see, our partners at Bet Online continue to be the number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, from live betting to the playoffs, esports, and more. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. It's the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Alex Frank here with you on the Locked On Bearcats podcast, your first listen or watch each and every day. So let's go to the running back room. I said it earlier in the offseason that a running back by committee approach can work. However, when the Bearcats have been at their best and have been most successful over the last 15 years, they've had a dominant running back lead that position. Think Jerome Ford. Think Michael Warren. Think Isaiah Pede. So therefore, the third thing that needs to happen this season is number 3, there needs to be a dominant running back in this room. And I would probably put my money on Ryan Montgomery being that guy. I believe he can be. We saw how good he was in the USF game. Jerome Ford missed that game. Ryan Montgomery stepped in, performed admirably, had a big touchdown run late in the game to seal it. Now, he hasn't been featured a lot in the seasons he's been here. He's been here for 3 years, 3 seasons. And he's going to be tasked with taking a big step forward this season, both in terms of playing time and production. Now, remember when Michael Warren took over as the lead back in 2018, he didn't have much experience. He was behind Jared Dokes. He was behind, there was another running back too, I believe he was behind. But remember, actually, no, I don't think he was, more I think about it. But Michael Warren didn't have a lot of experience prior to 2018. But that didn't matter because he took that team by storm with his first 2 games rushing for over 100 yards, and both of them 64 carries in those first 2 games. Went on to, we had students in Cincinnati, I remember, clamoring for him to be in the Heisman race, and he should have been in the Heisman race. Broke the single-season school record for touchdowns. Jerome Ford comes in. There was some competition between him and Jared Dokes. Jerome Ford took over as the lead back last year, and there was no looking back. He had close to 20 touchdowns last season. The Bearcats have a lot of running backs on their roster, yes. But when they're at their best, they have a bell cow running back leading the way. And the most dependable guy for me to say who could be that is Ryan Montgomery. But that's only because of his durability, which leads me to number 4. The fourth thing that needs to happen this season for the Bearcats to have success is Charles McClelland must stay healthy. Period. Because when he's on the field, this offense is tough to stop. Try stopping it, seriously. If he can be the lead running back, and I'm not saying he has to rush for 1,000 yards like Jerome Ford or Michael Warren or Isaiah Pede did. I'm saying he has to rush for maybe just 800 yards because he is a great dual threat running back, if that's even a term. Or I think it's versatile. Because you look at his ability to run the football, you look at his abilities as a pass catcher, that is huge for this offense. It's like a Darren Sproles for many years, what he was to the then San Diego Chargers. It's like what Marshall Faulk was to the Rams. It's like what LaDainian Tomlinson was to the then San Diego Chargers. When you have a running back like that can do multiple things, 2 different things, and do them well, that's going to make this offense tough to stop. Because think about it from this way. You have to stop Evan Prater's dual threat. You have to stop Charles McClelland at him now, running and receiving. You got to stop maybe the best tight end tandem in the country. You got to stop Tyler Scott going deep. You got to stop Nick Mardner, whether it's him going deep or over the middle. You got to stop Trey Tucker, who's also a speed demon. I mean, how are you going to stop this offense if Charles McClelland stays healthy and is making an impact? Because if you can pick up those hard-earned yards late in the season, when you're playing when you're playing on the road at Temple in late November when it's cold and you need those yards, or when you're trying to bust open a big play, bubble screen to Charles McClelland or on a wheel route, whatever it may be, how are you going to stop that if you're an opposing defense? If Charles McClelland stays healthy, he will give this offense another dimension that it, quite frankly, did not have a lot of last year. And if this team is going to be successful, which I do believe they will, Charles McClelland must stay healthy. Up next, something that needs to happen that might be hard to achieve, but it's also so obvious. I'll explain what that is next, but first, let's hear a word from two of our sponsors. Alex Frank here with you, Locked On Bearcats, each and every day on this Memorial Day, the official kickoff to summer, and we are going through today the 7 steps for success, the 7 things that need to happen for the 2022 Cincinnati Bearcats football season to be a success. Let's reset here. I said at the top of this show that the Bearcats, a success for them, a successful season for them is winning a conference championship. No ifs, ands, or buts. This is a program that's won 2 straight. I understand they're losing a lot of talent. I also understand they still have a lot of talent. I also understand that they are going to the Big 12. And the other teams going to the Big 12, Houston, yes, played them in the championship game last year, and they may be better this year. UCF is mediocre. They might finish 7-5 or 8-4. I expect the Bearcats to beat them this year because they're the better team. Cincinnati is the 2-time reigning conference champions, and they're going to the Big 12, and they're coming off a college football playoff appearance. Your expectations should be as such. So, let's go to my final 3 things that need to happen for this season to be a success. Number 1 was Evan Prater must be the starter. You will hear me say that constantly on this show until the first game of the season, if not every day, maybe even every segment. Maybe I'll just make that your daily, and segment reminder. I might do that. Number 2 was that the offensive line needed to get better. Number 3 was that there needed to be a bell cow running back, despite a running back by committee approach potentially being a workable solution. And number 4, Charles McClelland, who's a part of that running back room, must stay healthy. So let's go to my final 3 keys to this, or final 3 things that need to happen this season in order for it to be a success. Number 5, there cannot be a huge drop-off at cornerback this season. Cornerback. I'm not saying whoever starts at corner needs to be Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant. But the hallmark or a trademark or a characteristic of a great program is the fact that they can lose somebody or multiple players at a very good position and still be able to replace and reload and not rebuild. You think about, LSU. Don't be like them. Whoever since Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase have left, they haven't been the same offensively. Alabama has had multiple great running backs come through their team or their program, and it's just been one after the other. Whether it's been Mark Ingram to Derrick Henry to Najee Harris to Brian Robinson Jr. Replace and reload. They've had a lot of great receivers come through their program. Replace and reload. And I'm saying that because Cincinnati lost to Alabama last year, and you can learn a lot from Alabama. And by the way, those receivers, they went from Julio Jones to Calvin Ridley to Devontae Smith to Jalen Waddle, and now John Mechie and Jamison Williams. It's replace and reload for the great programs in the country. If Cincinnati aspires to be that, they got to replace and reload. I'm not saying, again, that they have to be Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant. But I am saying this. They have to be effective, and they can't implode. They cannot be such a drop-off from last year. The good news is there are capable players on this roster to step up. Guys like Taj Ward. Guys like Sammy Bumpus. There are players on Justin Harris. There are players on this roster to fill those voids, but they have to be effective. They cannot go back to where they were in 2017, where they were getting beat over the top, it felt like every single game. They can't go back to where they were in 2018 when, yes, the corners were better, but not great. They got to just replace and reload. The guys who played under Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant, they had great mentors in front of them. Take everything that they did on the field, take everything they learned from those two players, and apply it to when they get their time on the field this season. The good news is you're only facing one team that really loves to air it out, or actually two, UCF and SMU. The other teams you're facing, Tulsa, USF, I don't see them as, Air Coryell offense like. I don't see Temple and Navy and East Carolina, maybe East Carolina and Tulane as being teams that want to air it out. No. So that's fine, but when you face UCF and SMU, those are going to be the ultimate tests for whoever starts a corner this year. But they cannot have a huge drop-off if this is going to be a successful season, especially in the back part of the defense, the secondary. Let's go to number 6. This is another defensive key, and these stats I'm about to throw out at you might be surprising. And by the way, if you didn't pick up on it, and that's okay, the obvious is there can't be a drop-off at corner. But it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to achieve that because they're replacing 2 legends. They're replacing 2 All-Americans. They're replacing the Jim Thorpe Award winner. They're replacing the number 4 overall pick in the draft. That's hard stuff, man. But, again, the hallmark of a great program is a great position, a player leaves, next man up. Replace and reload. Next thing that needs to happen for the next season to be a success, there must be an edge rush presence. Last year, the Bearcats got away with not having one. They will not this year. Of the 39 sacks, 39 that Cincinnati had last year, 7.5 came from Curtis Brooks, 5.5 from Joel Dublanko, 4 from Darrian Beavers. That is 17 sacks coming from the middle of the field, not the edge. And by the way, all 3 of those players are now in the NFL. This is going to be a huge necessity for this defense this season. They are going to have to be able to rush the quarterback from the edge. They are not going to be, now they might still get great pressure up the middle with Jawan Briggs, Malik Vann, and Jabari Taylor. But I'm saying if they don't in the game, they need some pass rushing off the edge. That's why they brought in Noah Potter, transfer commit. He's going to help out a lot. And if he can play on the edge, big 6'6", 275 pounds, he's going to have to step up and give this edge and give this pass rush off the edge a boost. Because in the middle, it's going to be pretty difficult to replace the talent that's been lost. Let's go to my final thing that needs to happen this season. Remember, I said the kicking game might be something that needs to be something, or might be a thing that I have, a step for success this season. And sure enough, it is. The kicking game, simply put, must be better. Did you know that there was not a single kicker on the Bearcats football roster last year between Christian Lowry, Alex Bales, and Cole Smith? None of the 3 players, kickers, successfully made 50% of their field goals last year. Let that sink in for a minute. Cole Smith was 5 of 10. He attempted 10 of the 19 Bearcats field goals last year, made 5. Congratulations. The other 2 players, Lowry and Bales, combined 4 of 9. That's not going to get it done this year. Last year's team could overcome the kicking mistakes. Against Houston, they were able to. Against Temple, they were able to. Against Notre Dame, they were able to, which I'm still shocked at. Against Indiana, they were able to. They will not be able to do that this year because this team, I don't think talent-wise is going to be as good as last year's team. I still think they're going to be very good, but it wouldn't help to have a good special teams this year. You saw what the Bengals had last year. And that offense is pretty dang good. They also had a pretty dang good kicker to, If the drive stalled at the 35-yard line, he could boot one from 53. If the drive stalled at the 40, he could boot a 58-yarder. It's not difficult, ladies and gentlemen. It is not difficult to make field goals inside 40 yards. Now, I understand the, alignment in college football is a little different than the NFL. Some of the goalposts are a little different, but still, you are a college kicker. You have to hit the field goals inside 40 yards. How many times did you see last year a miss from inside 40 yards, a miss from 35, a miss from 25? That's not going to cut it this year. Now, Ryan Coe comes in from, Alex Coe was actually a classmate of mine in the 8th grade. Love that guy. Ryan Coe is coming over from Delaware. You hope that can help. He made a 46-yarder in the spring game. I'm all for seeing what he can do, and he should be the starter. But, anything better than last year? I don't care if the Bearcats only kick 5 field goals all season and make 4 of them. I'll take that over 9 of 19. That was what they were total last year. 9 for 19. If Alex Coe comes in and let's say he's 10 of 13, I'll take that. If he's 15 of 19, I'll take that. Now, obviously, I hope that's just something interesting, too, to think about. Like, how many field goals attempts do you want the Bearcats to have this season? If it's over 20, then you can seriously ask, what are they doing offensively? But I think the kicking game must be better for this season to be a success because it could come down in the Arkansas game, in the UCF SMU games, in the conference championship game, hell, even maybe a bowl game. If it comes down to the kicker, you want to feel confident that whoever that kicker is, Ryan Coe or whomever, is going to make the kick successfully regardless if it's from 30 or 50. That's going to do it today for me here on Locked On Bearcats 7 Steps to Success. Tomorrow we're back with another episode of Bold Prediction Tuesday. This one's going to be on the wide receiver position. Another position that is going through a change in terms of personnel, but there are some familiar faces, including a transfer who I believe is going to have a huge season for the Cincinnati Bearcats. If you're watching on the Locked On Bearcats YouTube channel, which we're up to 124 subscribers and counting, we're not done yet, though, so hit that subscribe button, follow us, so you can get an alert every time a podcast drops, and you can also like and share a comment on today's video as well. If you're downloading from an audio platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcast, don't forget to hit that subscribe button there, too. You can also share a comment and or give it a rating. All of that on audio or YouTube helps more Bearcats fans like you find this podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. Now, make your second listen Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. The Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast is hosted by Rafael Barlow, Richard Stamen, Sam Ferris, and Leif Thulin, and it gives fans an in-depth look into the biggest prospects, the latest player rankings, and, of course, big boards. Follow Locked On NBA Big Board every day on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, a happy Memorial Day to each and every one of you. Thank you to all the brave men and women who serve each and every day to protect the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. Have a great Memorial Day, whether that includes a barbecue, whatever that may include. Have a great Memorial Day. I'm Alex Frank for the Locked On Bearcats podcast. Have a great rest of your day, Memorial Day, and I will talk to you tomorrow on Bold Prediction Tuesday for the 2022 Cincinnati Bearcats wide receivers.